Welcome to our present state versus history on Speaker. Here we are focused on the current events of our culture through the principles of our history, trying to make sense of the culture and the mindset of today. I am your host, Ray Mayfield. Well, okay, folks, here we are again back on the pod. It is Wednesday, the 14th of February. Can you believe it? Happy Valentine's Day. Well, I guess I ought to tell that to my wife, huh? Anyway, got a lot to go over. I'm going to try to stay off of the rant. I know I got on a little rant the last time. It hasn't been published yet, but it's probably the episode that's getting ready to come up. But we're a little behind on our publishing for some of these two-parters. It's got us week or two behind off of our recording schedule. So I'm still working on getting some video in here. Talked to a guy that he's going to put me on his schedule when he gets time to come in and look over what we got going on here, and hopefully give us a list of do's and don'ts to put this thing together. Just want to remind you again to check us out on the truegospelchurch.org website. The links there for all kinds of information to further your education in the Word of God and the Constitution of the United States. Different avenues there with resource material like Mike New, the story of dealing with the United Nations Authority, the railroading basically that our government gave that young man. And speaking of which is another thing right now that they're having big conflicts with, this United Nations thing. They found out that some of these members of the United Nations were part of this attack on Israel, and these foreign countries have infiltrated the organization, and all kinds of stuff going on there with money and corruption. Another reason why we should not be a part of the UN, and that's a whole nother subject we're not going to get into today. But educate yourself and find out about that. And again, we want to invite you to the New Life Fellowship Church in Neosho, Missouri, under the big flagpole. Pastor Mark and Bonnie Buzzard there, if you're in the four-state area here and looking for a home church. The more I look at these things in our Constitution, the more I see the relevance between the attitude of Christianity and the Word of God. And that's really what got me started on these podcasts, is the same erosion of the mindset of the people towards the Word of God is exactly the same erosion that has created the problems that we have in our government, because the attitude towards the Constitution and the attitude towards the Word of God are both lacking in, should we say, reverence and respect. The problem is we don't really know. We think we know. We haven't done our own due benevolence, and I'm not downing anybody because I'm talking to myself here. I did for years, I just didn't pay attention to the government, what was going on. I figured, they got that handled, and they're all smarter than I am anyway. And, I kind of thought the same way about the Word of God. And then when I found out that the Bible's written on a 6th grade education level, then all of a sudden I'm insulted because I've been told my whole life, the King James Version is too hard to understand. Well, it's not too hard to understand. The Constitution of the United States is not too hard to understand. Yeah, it's written in Old English, but for most red-blooded, common-sense thinking individuals, it's not too hard to figure out what's going on. And the information is out there, but we have to use the same rules, I guess you could say, in grammar or English or whatever you want to call it, for the proper interpretation of both documents. We have to maintain a standard. I've been barking this for the whole time we've been doing these podcasts. So some of these things are being revealed out more and more. And like I made mention in that last podcast, I really want to go over this electoral college aspect of things. And I know that a lot of people in this country they don't have a clue on what the founding fathers intended for the Electoral College and how it was supposed to be operated. And I know that we in this state of Missouri, they've kind of went back towards the Electoral College, which I take my hat off to them for what they're doing, because we do not have a democratic or a democracy government. We have a democratic republic, if you want to use the word Democrat, but it's basically a republic form of government. We democratically elect our officials, but a lot of you are going to get excited with me, I guess, probably before this is over with, but just hear me out, because it is the original intention of the Constitution founders for the president and the vice president to basically be appointed. We're going to go over that with this Electoral College, and the public vote was well, I don't want to say not involved, but it was indirectly involved, okay, as far as the masses go. But again, it goes back to our proper representation of the House of Representatives and the people. You see, if we would restore that representation of the House to be on a slide with the population like it was intended to be. I may have to do another podcast on that. And go over some of that again as far as the intended number of representatives for the people by the population. But if we would unfreeze that, it was frozen by Wilson in 1929, that 1900 generation, to 435. And that is a hindrance to proper representation of the people. Okay, so that hinders the proper operation of this electoral college. And the whole purpose of those electors was just to appoint or nominate, I guess would be a better word, a president and a vice president. And the process they put out was very clear. And a lot of people in this country today, they get upset when you start talking about it, because you mean we don't get to vote on the president? Well, yes and no, I guess would be the right answer to that, because the electors that are put in place come out of the body of the people. So technically the people's voice is being heard, okay? It's just a less corruptible process. I guess that's the best terminology. And that's what we're going to go over a little bit in the Federalist Papers, with Federalist number 68, which is where Hamilton writes in the notes explaining the mindset towards this electoral college. We're going to read Article 2 of the Constitution, which goes through the explanation of the process of the electors. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today and some of the ideologies that was behind why they set these things in motion there. So again, I want to thank you for any donations, any help that you're giving to us on this little podcast. I hope you're listening to us on the Spreaker platform under our present state versus history. Check us out on the Facebook page, same name, our present state versus history. And if you would, when you get to that website, thetruegospelchurch.org, hit that donate button. Help us expand this platform if you believe that what we're doing here is a worthy endeavor. Okay, so I want to get right into this process, what it's telling us here in the Constitution. First of all, well, I wasn't going to read all of it, but I'm just going to start reading Article 2. Section 1, it says the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the vice president chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. This is how they intended for the president and vice president to be elected. Each state shall appoint in such a manner as the legislator thereof may direct a number of electors, equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress, but no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So we're going to bring these electors, which is going to be determined by the number of representatives and the number of senators, but any person who's already in public office is disqualified from being an elector, okay? So we don't want no biases involved. We want everybody that's independent of any setting office. That makes sense? And it says the electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for 2 persons, of whom one at least shall not be inhabitant of the same state with themselves. And they shall make a list of all the persons voted for and the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of government in the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes shall be the president. If such number be a majority of the whole number of the electors appointed. If there be more than one who has such a majority and have an equal number of votes, then the House of Representatives shall immediately cause by ballot choose one of them for president. And if no person having a majority, then from the 5 highest on the list, the said House shall in like manner choose the president. But the choosing of the president and the votes shall be taken by the Senate, by the states rather, the representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum of this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and a majority of all the states shall be necessary to a choice. In every case, after the choice of the president, the person having the greatest number of votes in electors shall be the vice president. But if there should remain 2 or more who have equal votes, the Senate shall choose from them by ballot the vice president. So it's pretty simple there. We're going to bring this separate body of people together called electors. And their purpose was to actually go out and look for a president in the beginning. You see, there was never intended to be this 2-party system. These people were supposed to be chosen from a completely independent aspect. They were not to be affiliated with any certain prescribed body. I'm getting most of this information from the Federalist Paper 68, okay, where they were describing these things. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's excerpts here. Now, this paper 68 was written by Mr. Hamilton. So these are his writings of the proceedings that took place when these processes were debated and put together. And it says in here, it says that this end will be answered by communicating the right of making it, not to any pre-established body, but to men chosen by the people for the special purpose and at the particular conjuncture. It was equally desirable that the immediate election should be made by men most capable of analyzing the qualities adapted to the station. the electors were to go find people that were qualified to be the president, that were not by anybody chosen. And later on in the paper, he writes again, he says, they have not made the appointment of the president to depend on any pre-existing body of men who might be tempered with the forehand to prostitute their votes, but they have referred it in the first instance to an immediate act of the people of America to be exerted in the choice of persons for the temporary and sole purpose of making the appointment. So these people are put together out of the electors for the complete purpose of nothing to do but find the president. And he was not to be involved in any pre-existing body of men. See, that right there eliminates our two-party system. There should be no Democratic and Republican party. We're looking for people that are qualified to do this job. This next paragraph says, it was equally desirable that the immediate election should be made by men most capable of analyzing the qualities adapted to the station and acting under circumstances favorable to deliberation and to the judicious combination of all the reasons and inducements which were proper to govern their choice. A small number of persons elected by the following citizens for the general masses will be most likely to possess the information and discernment requested to such complicated investigations. So the reason for that were these folks being called up. They wanted a independent body. They wanted them to be separate from the public office holders. Why did they want that? Well, one thing was they didn't want it to disrupt the communities because they figured this was the best way to keep everybody from having riots and fighting over who should be president. And it also detached them or separated them from the existing status quo, so nobody knew who they were going to be until they were appointed for that period of time, and it was just a brief period of time. So they were less able to be bought off or influenced to sell a candidate. That's what it is, to sell it, or to come out here and connive everybody into believing this guy's the best. And they were less able to stir up the trouble. See? So these electors, they didn't have any way of going out here to the public and parading somebody around because, we can be falsely led as to what somebody really is. So it makes the individual more credible. It makes the individual more capable, and it takes the corruption out. Hamilton said that cabal and intrigue and corruption were deadly adversaries to a republic government. So that got rid of all that. By putting these things together in this electoral college by independent people who were briefly put in service to do a job, and that was their only purpose, it eliminated a lot of opportunity for the cabal, for the vain imagination, and for corruption to be bought. And another thing they were afraid of is for the foreign powers of affecting our elections or raising their own chief magistrate into a position of influence. They didn't want people in foreign influences in our council. They didn't want people with foreign influences definitely sitting in the chair of the presidency. And with this put in place like it is, there is less likelihood of those things. And even after a person is in office, their re-election is determined by a electoral college vote in order for them to continue in office. So therefore, there's no place for corruption. There's no place for special interest groups to get their fingers on you see, there is a less likely chance of these things being twisted around and perverted around to a corrupt system. Each one of these states has a certain amount of electors determined by their number of senators and their number of representatives. So as these people are put together and brought into a place where they operate, then they can move into seeking out a candidate. See, it was their job to invoke a candidate or to convince somebody that they should be the president of the United States. And then, where we read there, they had to put one person. They had two people on the list. One of them was in the state, and one of them was outside of the state. And then they sent those things to the federal. So you got all the states. At that point in time, there was 13 different states. So you got 13 states sending their electors to the federal government, and they're all voting in separate places. That keeps the communities from getting all stirred up. And then all those votes are sent to be compiled into a single location and opened and certified. And the number of the greatest votes for the entire union of the individual becomes the president. And that way you get the most qualified people to run, and you have the public opinion expressed, because these electors are taken right out of the public. You see, they're chosen by the people to serve for this one and only purpose. So that was the original intent of the founding fathers. So we now, coming up to current day, we have this two-party system. So we violated the original intention already, because we have some, pre-existing bodies that we're pulling these men from, which I'm not, I can express my own opinion about how a lot of these things ought to be changed, but I'm not going to in this. We're just dealing with the facts of the matter here. And we got a process coming up here in the state of Missouri, because I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but there'll be no primary popular vote election type thing in the state of Missouri in this 24 election. There is going to be a caucus on Saturday, March the 2nd. And in McDonald County, it's going to be at the High School Performance Arts Building. You can get in there at 8 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, they're going to close the doors. So if you're not already in there by 10 o'clock, you're not going to get in. And they're going to choose the electors who are going to basically vote for the presidential candidate, whoever is running. In Newton County, they're going to meet at the Civic Municipal Auditorium. Okay, same time, same day, March the 2nd. It's going to be March the 2nd all the way across the state. And it's going to be at 8 a.m. They'll open the doors, and you can start registering. Now, you can pre-register on the website. It's missouri.gop/Missouri GOP-2024-caucus. Or if you just put in there Missouri GOP on your browser, it'll probably pull the website up. But as you get on that website, you're going to find a lot of information about the caucus. And if you're a registered voter, you can show up there, and you can take part in this caucus, which is basically going to choose the electorals. There's going to be, of course, however many candidates are still in the race at that time, they will be represented there. And so the candidates will all get electors chosen to represent whichever candidates they are, which will be set forth to be sealed up. And there's all kinds of rules in that, which I'm not going to get into now. But the point is, the state of Missouri is trying to get back to some of the constitutionality of the way our president is supposed to be elected. But we've got a lot of work to do because it needs to be repaired or restored back all the way across this nation. But with this process that they've spelled out, we need to eliminate the two-party system. Because if we would go back to the original unadulterated interpretation of what these men have written and the way that this is to be conducted, then we would have no need for this two-party system. But because we have this two-party system, we have these preconceived bodies of men that we're pulling these candidates from, and that opens the door for some of these corruptions that they were protecting us from. You say, well, we need to go back to, what's wrong with the people voting? Well, I'm going to challenge you. I'm not going to get into it today because I'm already out of time. But go back and look at the history and let that answer that question. Go back and look when we adapted this system and look at the change that has taken place in our government as far as our legislation and this informing or consolidation of our powers, which I think the next podcast I'm going to go back into doing or talking about the judicial system and the consolidation of these powers again, because it's directly relevant to this that we're talking about. And if you go back and look at the dates when they started conforming these things, they're all relevant because they're all working together. And the American people were duped into believing some of these things were beneficial to the system to make some of these changes. And these changes, like I've been saying forever, we need to go back to, we need to repeal that 17th Amendment. We need to unfreeze the representation of the people. And we need to ratify the Jefferson Amendment and put some things back in control over this judicial branch, because the consolidation of these powers has turned this federal government into this massive machine that it was never intended to be. And this is what has brought the demise to these areas in our government, and it's allowed all these corruptions. What was it that Madison said? He said, or Hamilton, he called a deadly adversary to the republic government is cabal, intrigue, and corruption. And we've got all those things involved in these positions now. And that's what he said. And another place in this Federalist Papers, he says, it will not be too strong to say that there will be a constant probability of seeing the station filled by characters preeminent for ability and virtue. This is what he was talking about would be if we kept this system in place, that this be the results of it. We would have people that were filled with character, ability, and virtue that would hold the office of presidency. It says the process of election affords a moral certainty that the office of president will never fall to the lot of any man who is not an eminent degree endowed with the requisite qualities, the talents for low intrigue, and the little arts of population may alone suffer to elevate the man to the first honors of a single state, but it will require other talents and a different kind of merit to establish him in the esteem and confidence of the whole union. I'm not going to read the rest of it there, but what he's talking about there is they can sell a man for his popularity maybe in one state, but he's not going to get voted into the entire union just because one state thinks he's a great guy and he's all charismatic. We're going to get people in that position that are filled with the characters of ability and virtue. And there's the key, virtue. That's what we've lost in our churches, we've lost it in our government, and we've almost lost it in our society. And we've got to restore the virtue. And I can see that I'm way over time on this thing. It's getting a little long, but I don't want to make it a two-parter, so I'm going to wrap it up with that. I hope you don't get your emotions involved and you study and search out, because, you know, when I first read this deal about the Electoral College and everything, I didn't like it myself. But the more I look at it and the more I analyze it in a logical fashion, the more I realize these men were right. It protects us from the corruption that we have in our presidential elections that we have. They want to talk about election integrity. This is the way we restore that. This is the way we restore some of these things. See, we don't need a new thing. We need to go back to the original thing. Same way in the Word of God. We got to go back to our heritage. We got to stand firm on the Word of God. And like I'm always saying, if we don't have faith in Jesus Christ and Him crucified, all else is sinking sand. So I'm hoping that you have found that place in the Lord, and I'm hoping that until we meet again on the pod, you have a wonderful day.